Hi everyone, it's Kelly here from Kellie Chasse Fine Art, and I wanted to take a minute here to say thank you to Lori for allowing us to share our creativity on this wonderful platform, and to let you guys all know or introduce myself as one of the contributors here from the original Alcohol Ink Art community when we first started. And today I want to show you how I use this aluminum tape to create a little bit of a lip for resin. And I use this when I'm working with resin if I want to build up the edges of the resin. It's a little tricky always to do resin in any kind of depth. They do recommend only about a 1/4 inch with art resin. But for example, on this little panel here, I like to put the aluminum tape around it and leave myself a little bit of a lip. Now, this isn't always the most perfect way because you're not going to get that straight edge. I know some artists actually will cut their wood afterward with the resin on it to make sure that you have that real sharp line. But this one gives you a very nice raw edge. It looks, homemade that way. It's not cookie cutter for sure. So what I do is I put it around the edge here, and I want to show you, this is a little struggle that I had, and I figured I'd share this with you all. I actually tinted my resin using the alcohol inks here. I had done my underneath tree here, and I was trying to do some little dots to give it some texture. So I started with the resin. I mixed up the pool blue and a little bit of the gold, and I dropped it in here with a craft stick, thinking that it wasn't going to move as much as it did. And if you've worked with resin before, you know that it has a tendency to go where it wants to go unless it's quite thick. Now, if I'd waited a little bit longer, I think I might have been able to contain the resin a little bit more if it started to cure. The art resin takes 24 hours to cure, so I had to wait for a long time. Some of the quicker resin you might be able to do this with. And as a contributor, I do want to mention here really quickly that I do have a YouTube channel, and I show a lot of things that I'm working on each week. I try to get actually a video up a week, so there's lots of demonstrations on there, and it's all free. So if you want to head over to my YouTube channel, you can check that out. So anyway, I finished this up. I went ahead and put these dots everywhere, and then I will show you here what happened. I did want to put a little bit of the texture in the tree trunk here too, so I threw a little bit of that in there as well. So here's what happened. Once this sat here for a little bit, all of this moved. See what happened? It just went everywhere. So I had a second idea. I had my silicone mat, and I created these little dots on the silicone mat where they wanted to stay a little bit better. I waited until the resin was a little bit thicker before I did this, so it stayed in place a little bit more, and when it did spread out, it was okay. I just had a little bit larger dots, but when it was on the completely wet resin, it really just ran in all together. So this contained it a little bit better. And I waited here, like I said, as this started to somewhat cure before I did it, so it stayed in place a little bit better. So I created tons of these dots. This was my second attempt, and I don't know if I mentioned this is the first time I had done this. So I was, as always, I'm always creating and trying new things and playing. And I think that's some of the best things about art and resin and alcohol inks is the playing part. And then, so here it is. I have it all finished. It looks gorgeous. I peeled them all off and I set them in place. And now I'm going to resin on top of it. And here was my second problem. Once I put the resin down over it, watch what happens. They just kind of disappear. You can still see the color, but the resin just basically covered it right up and went right over it. So I was getting a great thickness on the edges here. So I have a lot of depth in this painting, which was really neat. It looks very 3D, especially in person. So I let this dry, went ahead and did the torch. I was not very happy at this point because I was really hoping to see a lot more of that texture. I was hoping it would raise up enough so you would still see those dots. And it did pretty much what it did the one time before, so it really blended in a lot. There's a few dots in here that stood out, some of the ones that had gold with the blue in it, but for the most part, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So I torched it and I let this set, and I let this harden as well. And then I had created a lot of those dots, so I still had some left over. So before the resin was completely cured, so I waited overnight, it was about 15 hours, and then I added more dots on the very top of it, on top of the resin. So the resin was still a little bit sticky, so it stayed on there. It basically set itself right into it and hardened right within that resin because the resin was still tacky. You have to be very careful when you put them on there that you don't touch any of the other areas, of course. But it worked. So after trial and error, and that's why you never want to give up on a piece. If you have a piece and it doesn't do exactly what you originally planned, go with it and use this as a fun creative time. So here's what it looked like close up once I got the next set of dots in there, and that's what I was going for. That's the look I wanted. And here is the finished piece. And I'm going to show you here on the side. This is how much I built it up, and it looked so cool. I sanded down the edges a little bit, and then I painted it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks again for having me on here, and I look forward to seeing all of your work. And if you guys want to tag me on Instagram with any of your resin and alcohol ink paintings, you can do that at Kellie Chasse _fine art. I would love to see them. All right, take care.
Come learn, create, and share with us. It's a life-changing opportunity. Exciting.